Hi, I'm Greg Uland with Reynolds of Reynolds, and this is Connected. Right now I get to talk with Anthony Monteiro, the president of Automotive Retail at DRAIVER. We've been working with DRAIVER quite a bit over the last year or two, and excited to talk with Anthony and catch up on everything that's going on. So thanks for taking time, Anthony.
You're welcome, thanks. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and have a little conversation.
Absolutely. So DRAIVER, I guess, if you don't mind, give a high-level overview, what the company is, what they do. It's a pretty prominent company in the automotive space, but just level set for us.
So we found the major need for vehicle logistics, picking up, dropping off vehicles, home delivery, service, valet, products, and also lot-to-lot moves. Moving vehicles in between just your own dealership is very inefficient in our industry. There's the Toyota manager that's moving a car to Ford, and a Ford guy that's moving it to Toyota, and they never talk to each other.
Right.
And they create a big, massive amount of inefficiency. So we've solved that problem, we think, for the industry.
Good. So there's a bunch of different pieces to that puzzle, right? So let's start a little bit. I'm curious from your perspective. You've been doing this for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So thinking about deliveries when you're selling a car, I would say it's not prominent still, but I think we're starting to see a trend moving in that direction. So I'm curious from your perspective what you're seeing and what dealers are doing and how they're handling it.
Yeah, so, there's a brand name out there, Carvana, that kind of made that home delivery, vehicle in the driveway, a common name and a common thing that customers have accepted.
Yeah.
Auto retailers were slower kind of getting into the game, only because it's very fragmented, right? If you look at a Carvana model, they're very centralized, and it's real easy from a hub and spoke perspective and build your infrastructure around that. Most auto retailers haven't. They've lived on, I come to the dealership, I meet the salesperson, and we make a deal. So as transition happens in the industry, a lot of the consolidators are now saying, well, do we need a Carvana? Why can't we be that Carvana? But they still don't have the logistics nor the infrastructure. So that's where we can come in and help them. We can create marketplaces of drivers so they don't have to go out and hire a bunch of drivers to do this. And it's an on-demand. So, give us a couple hours or a day and we'll facilitate that for them.
Yeah. So that's definitely one hurdle, right? Is having that infrastructure and having those logistics down. What are some other hurdles preventing dealers from doing remote delivery? So you think about, a customer, obviously they're going to start online, they're going to do the research online. Some will go through all the way to maybe submitting a credit app, get into some payments. I mean, you'll have some that'll go all the way and wanting to sign contracts, but they might come and test drive the vehicle, but then either they're not ready to sign paperwork, they want to review it, sign it at home, maybe they got a co-buyer, they got a whatever. There's a lot of variables in the...
That's right.
So, but to get the car to the consumer then, if they wanted to have it delivered to their house, if it was easy, we'd see a lot more of it, I think. So what are some of the other hurdles that maybe are out there?
Well, so, you have this challenge of quality, right? So when you're doing a delivery of a new vehicle, you've got CSI, you've got all these other components that come into play. And when you start subletting, let's call it, a home delivery, you might lose some of that personal connection or branding that happens while they're at the dealership. You have trained salespeople that can walk around and set the radio and adjust the seats. When you start getting into this remote product, it's a little bit different. You might lose some of the quality, but what we've done at DRAIVER is, because we're a skilled-based platform, we can give somebody a classification of white glove delivery. Just like we deliver a lot of trucks that require CDL license, and that's a checkbox, right? Do you have a CDL? Are you a white glove driver? When that order comes in, we know those specific drivers that meet the criteria. But still, we see dealers that are very progressive. What will happen is our driver will drop it off, maybe do some paperwork, do some basic stuff, but then the salesperson gets on FaceTime, meets with the customer, and they walk around the car and say, hey, this is how you set your radio station. This is, where you might press this button or that button, and that personalization's still there, but they're doing it the same way that we do Zoom meetings all the time, right? It's still kind of face-to-face, but it's digital.
So how do you balance that then as a dealer where you do want some control over that delivery, right? So you have the face-to-face interaction. That's a good example, FaceTime. But making sure that you can control that last interaction, because really what you want, obviously, you sold the car, right? The deal's done. You're delivering the car. That delivery experience is going to probably be the last one that consumer has with you until hopefully their first service appointment. So how do you ensure that last connection point, that delivery, is a really positive memory for that consumer so that they do come back to you for service?
That's right. Yeah, so you want to make sure, one, that vehicle, if you're going to promise a delivery, that it shows up at the time that you say it's going to be there. Just like when you order your pizza today, right? When it starts to get late, you're like, where's my pizza?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with a car. Like, so provide that transparency of pickup and drop off, when they're going to be there, who the driver is, but then also that dealership still needs to reach back out to that customer, ask them how their experience went, and engage with that customer of that experience and walk them through any questions they might have. So it still goes back to that dealer doing what they always do. It's just using technology to do it a little bit different than us standing here face to face.
Right. Okay. So one of the other things, thinking in a similar vein, whenever you start implementing new processes and you start implementing new technology, it seems like the intent is always for it to be more efficient, right? Mm-hmm. But almost inevitably, it ends up being less efficient because you're trying to learn it, you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to change things. How do you ensure that you can be efficient when delivering vehicles? Because you think about it, you got a salesperson, and if they're sitting around waiting for a half hour or an hour because they're waiting on a call from the customer, just depends on when the car gets there, when it gets off the truck. I guess to get to the question is, how do you ensure efficiency so that you don't just have a bunch of people sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting on delivery?
Well, like any logistics, right? You have a time that something's due and a time that somebody needs to complete a task. All of that is visible through the platform. The salesperson can see that driver heading to the customer's house, and the customer can see the driver coming to them. So they all have this synchronization of the timing of that event. And another thing, it's really important because sometimes there's no vehicle to get backwards. So we use Uber to meet that driver once they're done their process to come all the way back. So timing is really critical. And when you're thinking about vehicle logistics,
right,
it really has to be planned, and everybody needs to understand what the plan is so that they can execute it efficiently, just like in service. If I didn't have electronic repair order dispatching, we'd be back to, hey, who do I give the air conditioning job to? And that technician might not even know it's coming.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good transition, because the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was like pick up and drop off in service. So it's a completely different animal. Right? We're talking about vehicle deliveries and then shift gears to, but I think about it, and the convenience there is so high, right? For a consumer to drive to the dealership, to drop the car off, to either get a shuttle, get an Uber, get a whatever to get to work, right? Have somebody trail them to get to work. They got to time it out. They show up late to work. They had to drop their kids off at daycare. There's just so many logistical things that go into dropping a car off for an oil change. So how can you make it easier, and what do you see maybe dealers doing that are successful with pickup and drop off so it's efficient for them and things like that?
Yeah, so, for years and years, high-end dealerships, Highline Cars, they've offered that service mostly to their most loyal customers. They have a process, so it's not foreign or new to them. When you get to your domestics and volume products, well, they don't offer that. So by using a platform like a DRAIVER integrated into a Reynolds platform, I see all my service appointments, and I'm able to select the ones that I want to offer service, valet, pickup, and drop off, and I can manage it. I can do all of them, or I can do a percentage of them. How much bandwidth do I think my business can handle? And then there's also the opportunity to charge the customer. As consumers today, we're conditioned a little bit now to pay for a service, for somebody to bring something to your house. So, and then like you said, I look at my watch and I go, geez, it's going to take me an hour to get there, hour to get back. I'm going to have to wait for $100. They're going to come and pick it up and drop it off, and you click that button and you make it convenient. Now, there's still, like you said, there's the coordination at the dealership level that has to be trained and implemented, because what you don't want to have happen is these drivers show up and someone's standing there going, what are you here for? And then that kind of breaks down the whole process.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody, I think it was earlier today actually, who was telling me at their dealership about 7:30 in the morning, there's a slew of Uber drivers that sit in the McDonald's parking lot and wait for the calls to come in so they can just swing by and pick everybody up at the store. So they become like a hub almost for Uber in the morning in their little town.
Yeah, it happens the same with our DRAIVER drivers. They know that fill-in-the-blank dealership is going to have 8 or 9 or 10 pickup and drop-offs today. So what they'll do is they'll just, because it's like Uber, right? It's geolocation, and they know the closest driver that can fit that skill set. So they'll just park out in front of the dealership or in the dealership lot, and those orders come in, they accept it, and there you go, you're off and running, and they start picking up and dropping off vehicles all day for them. And they kind of become an extension of the dealership. It's not just normally a random driver, it's a driver that's been working for them over a period of time now, and sometimes it's even their own former porters that they've moved on to the DRAIVER platform, so now that they don't have to incur the overhead of payroll, taxes, and benefits.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit and just paint the picture of what that interaction looks like. So if I'm a consumer, as an example, right, and I walk into the store and I drop my car off, let's go this path first. So I drop my car off for service, do the write-up, and they say, do you need a ride to work? I say, yep, absolutely. From there, what does that interaction look like? Is there an introduction? Does the car have a magnet on it with the dealership's logo? Is there? I just think, how do they know what's going on? I don't know.
So, I mean, that's the process at the dealership. So they have to decide how they want to communicate to the customer. I'm going to offer you a ride back to your home or work, or better yet, when your car's done, I'm just going to bring it to you. So once it's complete, drop it off. I'm going to drop it back off in your driveway. It should be done somewhere around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. If not, we're going to communicate with you throughout the process. And in that case, it just becomes, with the integration that we just did, it's a simple click of a button to say, hey, I need to bring this car back to the customer. And the service advisor and the dealership, at that point, their hands are off. The DRAIVER driver comes, picks up that car and does all that work, and then comes back and hands the keys back, if it's a pickup, back to the service advisor.
Okay. So that's happening at basically like the appointment and just click a button?
It's at the appointment, or the service repair order's closed, then in order to bring the car back to the consumer, or at the appointment level, they can select service valet, and we'll just go and pick that car up, and or send an Uber to send them back home once the car's dropped off. So there's a bunch of different combinations that you can do, which is cool, makes it really flexible for the dealer and super convenient for that consumer.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So how have you seen, I guess, what has the momentum been for DRAIVER? Because I hear, definitely in different markets too, it's a little different, but kind of the up and down flow of, man, everybody's going remote and it's all online to, well, yeah, kind of, and all the way to, yep, not really at all. There's just not an appetite. So I don't know what you've seen, in the last, say, 12 months or more or less, whatever makes sense for you. And I'm sure, again, it probably varies by market. But
it does vary by market, and it also varies not only by market, but by brand and dealership group. So, it's like anything. From the top down, if you want to implement a process, it's the top down that says, hey, this is the process that I want my customer to experience in whatever it is, a new DMS, a new advanced service product. It doesn't matter. You still need to have the top down say, hey, this is what we're going to do at our dealership, because this is the experience I want to give our customer. And then once they commit to that, then the rest of the team starts to get trained, fall in, and they live by it. It's like, I come from the old days in CRM, and back in those days, to get somebody to go logging up was a huge task, because they wanted to write it down on a piece of paper and keep it in their pocket. And to train that paradigm shift is what we're doing now. And this reminds me what we're doing back in those days of bringing in CRM. Now we're bringing in vehicle logistics that just nobody thinks about. It's just one of those things that you should think about, because, how do you know how much it's costing you today if you're not managing, tracking it, or trying to be efficient, to be able to even compare, am I saving, losing money, or offering a good service to my customer and my own employees? Am I putting undue work on them to have to text Bob and Billy and Joe or Mary to find a driver? I use this analogy. Remember the days when you used to try to get a cab? You'd stand on the corner and you'd wave, and you didn't know if there was a passenger in the car, and you were just like, every time you're like, oh man, and it might take you 10 minutes to get a ride, and now you just pull your phone out and go, I need to go there, and you stand around and talk to your buddy, and the car pulls up and goes, Anthony, and you get in it. So you don't have to find and pay money. And this is the other thing that's cool. When you order that ride, you know exactly how much it's going to cost you for that. Remember getting in a cab, you didn't even know. Like, when you order an Uber, you know it's going to cost you $18, $20 before you got in a cab, and it would just be like, you just watch the thing. It
starts
tick,
at $350, right?
Yeah,
And then it just goes.
And it just keeps ticking. Now we know exactly, and we can measure those things, and we can really control our costs because it's a cost factor no matter what and how you look at it.
Yeah, you're right. Are there any scenarios, and if the answer is no, that's perfectly fine. I'm just curious if there's any scenarios where remote deliveries and things like that just aren't a good fit, where you haven't seen it work?
Yeah. So there's markets where customers have just basically said, I would prefer to come down and test drive that car and go through that process face to face, and they just haven't adopted it. But it's a generational thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at millennials or even Gen Z people, if you interview any of them and you said, A, go to dealership, negotiate, spend a lot of time, have your car appraised, versus B, Tesla model, go online, pick your car, it shows up in your driveway, they pick up your trade and take it back, and you signed everything online,
Right.
they're always going to pick B. Maybe my generation is going to say, no, I want to go down there and I want to negotiate and I want to be part of that experience, but that's changing, and over time we're going to see, I think, a stronger shift to the B model.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's good. Good deal. All right, well, Anthony, it's been great to catch up.
Yeah,
we hadn't talked in a while, so I'm glad that we were able to.
Same.
But what haven't we touched on that we should, or anything else you want to talk about at all that we need to touch on before we hop
Well,
out?
I mean, I think the exciting news between us, when
Yeah.
I mean us, I'm talking about Reynolds and DRAIVER, and then Uber, our third partner in this, is that we have an integration now that makes it really, really easy for our mutual clients to look up a customer or see that repair order in the appointment log and click. Literally, it's a click. And we're in the software development business, and everyone says, oh, it's only one click. It really is, to say, hey, order a ride or pick up their car, and it makes it so easy. And we're really excited about that integration, because we know it's going to be a home run for our mutual clients.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. All right.
Cool.
Well, thanks again for
You're
talking.
welcome.
It's always a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and
Yeah,
hopefully it
of course.
won't be so long next time.
Thanks.